Fame is a funny thing. And one, it's a chip that people use as a business. You would put so-and-so's picture on your website. You could convince somebody to hire you just on the fact that that person was with your stuff. But it's also, they're human beings, you know, and I think sometimes when you just start throwing them around, it's like, well, it's so-and-so and so-and-so, and it's just, it sometimes doesn't come off right. It can come off like, I'm important because I've worked with important people, you know. And so if you're not treating people with respect or, you know, with some level of humanity or even doing good business, no one wants to work with you anymore.
This is a Hillsong Creative Podcast, where we hear from creative experts and influencers, the dreamers and the doers, what they've learned and what we can learn from their journey as we explore, respond, and create. I'm Rich Langton, and on today's episode, we have video director Ben Nicholson. Well, so great to have you back on another episode. Thanks for joining us. Today we have Ben Nicholson being interviewed. I had only recently met him before we had the interview, but the way he was described to me was someone who's worked on the Super Bowl halftime shows, and he's worked with Grammy-Award winning artists, and his work has been used in stadium tours by some of the major artists in the world. But what I loved about Ben was that he didn't describe himself that way, and he didn't try to leverage those relationships or the things that he's done in the past. Ben is an interesting man, and there's a lot of depth to him. So as we listen, let's jump in and let's really learn from the tone of the interview and what Ben doesn't say as well as what he does. Thank you so much for coming, Ben, and coming all the way to Australia and hanging out with us at the conference now. But
yeah, thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for this too.
Yeah.
I'm excited to ask you lots of great questions and to get to know you.
Yeah.
I know a little bit about your sort of backstory of where you got to now, but if you had to sum it up, who is Ben Nicholson?
I think, I'm 42. I got into the music video entertainment business out of college. Wanted to be in filmmaking, and nobody wanted to hire me when I moved to LA, so I got involved in what was called there's a magazine called Res Magazine that some of your older listeners might remember, and it was the art of digital filmmaking, and it was published when I got out of school in 1998, and the first issue was there when I was living in California. I moved to California right after I graduated, and subsequently about that time was the beginning of motion graphics as we know it. It used to be a lot of people would do post-production with Flames and $100,000 computers, and then it became a desktop thing with After Effects and Photoshop and Illustrator. And I got a job as an IT guy at a place called Fuel in Santa Monica, and they were one of the first places that actually were doing motion graphics with Mac computers and things like that. Was there at about the time they had gotten the ESPN X Games, which was like the holy grail for those guys because they were all skaters and surfers and things like that. And I wasn't there for very long, but it sort of it exposed me to a world that I didn't even know existed, and gave me an odd skill set in that I knew how to fix SCSI drives and reinstall Mac OSs and things like that. So, and that was really my foray into animation. From there, I learned how to do animation, meaning After Effects 2D motion design animation. Because my boss at the time went on to another company. I followed him there, and he taught me how to use After Effects. And that, long story short, got me back to Ohio with my wife and ended up at a motion design company, post-production company in Ohio called Lightborn, and was there for about 6 years, and became the creative director, kind of operations guy by the time I was 28. And it was also the time that my entire life was crashing and burning because of all sorts of ambition and things like that. And I got offered a job to work at a church, Crossroads, where I'm back now. And I actually say I got saved when I was on church staff. I don't know how I got on church staff, but I ended up going because I needed a change in my life for a lot of reasons, for personal reasons and for relational reasons with my family, and gave me a chance to reset everything. And yeah, I mean, God found me in a powerful way there, which I can talk more about if that's interesting. But I was there for a good 3 years, and really thought I was going to go work at a church that was as a philanthropic exercise when I first showed up there. And then it was a lot more about my personal healing and trying to understand what it means to actually follow Jesus. And God took me out of there after 3 years, and I ended up going back to Lightborn, but not in the same capacity. I went to work for the guy I hired I hired an executive producer who then hired me back, but I was just the creative director. Right. So I didn't have to bear the full weight, which was really nice. And while I was there, we were looking to differentiate our skill set. So we were doing lots of local commercials, some short film stuff, and then realized that, we needed to make money from another way. And so me and an editor named Jeremiah Schuff, we went to school together, and we drove down to Nashville and just cold called production companies because it's like a 4-hour drive from Cincinnati. And we fell in with this guy named Sean Silva, who was doing music videos for Kenny Chesney. And he decided to take a shot and let Jeremiah edit the music videos. Okay. And then that was right at the time that he was getting really big. And so we started making more songs for his live shows. He went to stadiums. And then the video component, video technology with video content was escalating at a rapid rate with Mbox and all sorts of other things. And so people were really relying on it as their main set piece. And so we got attention because we could do it at a professional video level, because at that time it was guys who kind of did it, friends of the band, whatever, and it wasn't as legitimate as an enterprise. And we were able to bring a level of professionalism, deliver on time, and do it well that people were surprised by, and that we had made a name for ourselves in that arena. And I did that there for about 8 years, and that led to all sorts of interesting adventures. For me, I really enjoyed not being in the normal video world. I really enjoyed producing things for screens that weren't rectangles. It was all sorts of shapes and pixels, and half of it was figuring out the process, And also the fact that you would go and just drop computers into an arena or a hockey locker room and make a video production company. It was interesting. So it kind of felt like the special forces of video. And also I love music. So I'm not a musician, but I love music. So I got to do video for music, which is something that I really enjoyed. And the thing that I ended up in reflection that I really enjoyed was how production was more regimented than most creative executions, because it's multi-departmental. And so there was this need to work as a team. There was a need to understand who was in charge. You go into different ecosystems and have to figure out who's got the creative gun, so to speak. And so it was always a different set of personalities. And I liked that kind of the figuring out end of it. And then from there I ended up leaving, and for almost 3 years was a part of another company, which I was a partner. And we were doing a similar set of things, but a little bit differently, where it was becoming more of a technology media consultancy. Also producing video content, but really people were coming to us to how to use their money wisely and how to do content or technology integration for live shows in a way that made sense budgetarily and the right equipment. So it started to become more of a consultancy, I think. And then just recently, about 4 months ago, I really felt strongly that God was telling me that it was time, some for personal reasons, to be around for my kids at the age they are and have a better rhythm for my family. But there was something that was really going on that was much deeper, I think, which was falling in love with the church again, which is a whole subtopic. But he just really took me through about, again, 3 or 4 years that I fell in love with the organized church. When I had left, first time working for a church, I didn't think I would ever be back. I don't know that I really lost hope. It was just not. It didn't feel like me. It wasn't personal. So I did a house church thing for a while and banged around. And then I don't know. I don't know if you want to go this way or which way. Where should I go next?
I'm loving just hearing the journey. So that
Yeah.
Wow. So here's a question. So in amongst all of that, I guess when I first heard about you, when one of the guys here came and said, there's this guy, you need to meet him, we need to talk to him. It was in relation to, I guess, the people that you'd worked with, and it, they listed some of the clients, I guess, that you'd had, or the famous people that you'd worked with. And I noted when you were telling the story, you didn't mention any of those.
Yeah.
Was that on purpose, or?
Well, I think it's an interesting. Fame is a funny thing, and one, it's a chip that people use as in unhealthy ways. Yeah, you use it. I mean, as a business, you would put so and so's picture on your website, and you could convince somebody to hire you just on the fact that that person was with your stuff. Yeah, and so I'm always very like. I don't know why I'm as reluctant. I don't totally understand why I'm reluctant, but it feels like there's like kind of a respect of like, I've had the great privilege. God's allowed me to be a part of some amazing lifelong dreams with the people that I've worked with. Yeah. And, but it's also, they're human beings, and I think sometimes when you just start throwing them around, it's like, well, it's so-and-so and so-and-so, and it's just, it sometimes doesn't come off right. It can come off like you're name dropping, and I'm happy to talk about those things. I just don't want it to come across like I'm important because I've worked with important people. Right. If that makes sense.
Do you find that people, when they hear that you've worked with whoever, that they treat you differently?
Yes.
Yeah.
They do. I mean, it's inevitable. It gives you instant credibility, which is a funny thing. Yeah. Because it really has nothing to do with my character, does it? Just somehow I managed to get those jobs and be with that person, and they may or may not be healthy and or interesting. Right.
Yeah, I find it's an interesting area to talk about, particularly, I guess, for our audience listening, because I think as Christian creatives, oftentimes, like the pinnacle of success might be that a Christian is working with, some secular name. Yeah. And somehow that means something more, or that somehow that's the goal. And in reality, that may be a great outcome, but it's not necessarily the goal, right?
No, and I think I think you could loop the two things together, because I think from a Christian perspective, you could say, well, I'm taking God's light into dark places or something like that. You could also say I'm taking my creativity into this arena. And so you carry these things with you into these spaces. But what I found, as I did it much more when I was younger, of like, even you would have a client that's, say, arena rock superstar guy, and you were trying to leverage that platform to show your thing, right? And then you start thinking, you go like, well, am I in here and interested in being here because I think I could make them a believer? Right. And then you're like, well, then what's my is that a good motivation? Or is it a relational motivation that and I've learned, and I don't know, I mean, there are people who I'm not an evangelist, as you might imagine. There are people who have evangelical call that are much more aggressive about things, or people who are much more creatively aggressive. Like, they're like, this is the thing, and this is what it needs to be. But you begin to have to listen to them, because you either have your ideas shot down, like, let's just move to the creative space. You have your ideas shot down because you're not really listening to the song. Like, do you really understand what he's talking about? Do you really understand what they're asking for? What's the heart of the song? What's this mean? Rather than like you wanting to make your own personal film and attach it to that person's name. I mean, that happens all the time. I did it. But to get to that space where you treat everybody like, and this is their work, you're a part of it. You need to listen and be a part of the team and contribute. And, as low or high as you can. And also realizing that what I also appreciated about even the music world is it was very small group of community of people, like highly relational. That's the biggest mistake I think a lot of people make going into the music industry or even like the touring industry. Everybody knows each other. And so if you're not treating people with respect or, with some level of humanity or even doing good business, no one wants to work with you anymore. And so that was that thing of relationship first. I wanted to be people's friend and do right by them.
Hey, I really hope you're enjoying the episode so far. In case you didn't know, our podcast is brought to you by the Hillsong Worship and Creative Conference. It's a conference for all creatives, and it's something that I really encourage you to be a part of. If you'd like more information, go to hillsong.com/WCC. I'll be there, our whole team will be there, and I'd like to see you there too.
I'm Ben Nicholson, and these are my Fantastic Four. I would be terrible at a middle school or elementary school teacher. My favorite movie this year has been either the Batman movie, Lego movie, or Thor Ragnarok. And it's because I have two boys who are 12 and 10. And to sit in a movie and watch your boys be utterly delighted and jump around because things that are awesome, like giant dogs fighting the Hulk, is pretty fun. So, the title of the current chapter of my life would be "Living His Dream," meaning living God's dream. The album I'm listening to right now is not necessarily an album. I'm listening to a series of songs. So when I was on the airplane over here, I had Jason Upton's "Seek First" on continuous replay. I think probably about for 7 hours while I was sleeping. And then I've been fascinated by Glimmer and Dust. I just keep listening to that one over and over again. I generally don't listen to albums. I'll get stuck on a song and I'll listen to it over and over again.
So then you've been on this journey of realizing, I guess, that season was coming to an end.
Yeah.
And somehow you find yourself back at the same church you were at some years before.
Yeah.
How are the worlds different, or how do you see the differences, or are they the same? Creatively, obviously spiritually they're quite different, but how do you see that?
I think we're actually in some sort of seasonal change. And I think that whereas we might have thought, hey, we'll bring the light of Christ into dark areas, or, I'm going to hold my position out here in this, or maybe this is just a personal thing for me, is it wasn't about going out, but it was grouping together and going to create something that could declare the name of Jesus and be a lighthouse to the world in no holds barred 211 way. And when I encountered, actually pivotal in my journey was I encountered Hillsong about 4 years ago. I was kind of late to the game. I didn't really start getting into real worship music until about 4 or 5 years ago. I didn't know any good music actually existed until I found a vein on Spotify. Actually made it possible for me to like worship music, and that's all I listen to anymore. And I think what I saw when I went to Hillsong worship concert near Cincinnati, and it floored me. And it was, I never worshiped the Lord for more than 30 minutes in my life. And it was like, an hour and something maybe. And it was like standing in a vortex of the Holy Spirit. I mean, I was in tears the entire time, and it was heavy. And Christine King came and preached, and it was amazing. I think some people were getting delivered behind me, and then the visual execution, the musicianship was excellent, and I was like, how is this possible?
Because you'd not seen that before?
And it was also just what I would understand now, but my heart was resounding to was the name of Jesus. Like making his name great, known to the nations, is a huge deal. Yeah, it's just been on my mind even this past week. I mean, it's a whole different game. It's not just making great music and making songs about God. This is about fulfilling the thing that is to come, and it's like grabbing onto, like I call it a rope tow, or getting on a ski lift, and you just get pulled by it. So that part of it made me pay attention to the large group meeting again. I had dismissed it.
Right. Even though you'd seen stadiums, and you'd seen it, in a sense, done in the world.
Yeah.
But you could never associate that with church.
Yeah, I couldn't see that it was actually that good.
Yeah, right.
And there were a couple other things that happened in there, but the other part of it was just really getting to, again, this is a part about God really romancing me back to the church. A pivotal moment for me, I had a really bad experience happen at my house, and with a house church meeting it's not even worth going into, but it was really not fun. And I went to sleep that night, and I had a dream. I had asked God, I'm like, God, I don't know what to do. I'm lost. I don't know where to take my family. And in my dream, it was John Wimber's son came up to me. I didn't know anything about John Wimber, really. Came up to me, and he opened this book, and he read all these verses about caring for the sheep. And he said, God says you need to take care of his sheep. And then he opened to another part, and he said, and he wants you to exercise your gifts. And then he closed the book, and I woke up. And there was a vineyard church that was up the road from me. So we went on Easter. And there was a guy there. He gave his testimony on Easter Sunday, and it was about how God delivered him in a dream from mental illness, like straight up living on the streets, and his parents told he would never be a functioning human. And he's giving his testimony, and in that Sunday, he asked people if they wanted to receive Christ, and it was the first time I'd actually ever seen anybody receive Christ on Easter in a church.
Right.
And God and I have interesting conversations. So I would say that conversation he had with me while I was watching that was really humbling. He said, "See, there's more people here being saved right now than in your entire life." And it was about 3 years of me going to that vineyard church that I fell in love with it again, and believed in the use of the church building and the traditional service. I grew more in 3 years just going to a Sunday service there than I had in 10. And it was about a lot of pride and things in my own heart. So I'd gotten to a place in my career as I was working for the band I dreamed I would when I was 16. And it was clear as day. I was standing there listening to rehearse, and I just felt like God said, I've given you your dream. It's time to live mine. And I just wept. And I was just like, yep, you did. And God's that good. And that's a totally different perspective from giving something up. Like, I've accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish at 42 years old. I'm like, all right, I'll do whatever you want, God. And so I applied back at Crossroads, and they wanted me to come in and help with some things that I thought I could add value to. And it's all my friends from, since one of them baptized me, the other ones ministered to me, and they're good friends of my family. So it's been a really good fit.
Love that.
Yeah.
I can remember a similar experience where a few years back now, but I was on a Delirious tour with Ruben Morgan from here, who's my brother-in-law. But so we were traveling together, and I remember standing there and just having the same sort of thing, where God had fulfilled lots of my dreams I guess in a short time frame, and it was almost like he was sort of saying, like Ephesians, where God can do more than we can ask or even think or imagine. It was almost like he's saying, like, your dreams are good, great dreams, but I've got those covered and more. Yeah. And sometimes it's so easy to get caught up in just having dreams for your life or wanting to fulfill things, and that is good. But then when you realize that God has got your back, he's got more for you, and the more is found in kind of submitting what we want to what he would want. It's ironic, but that's where the sort of an abundant life really is, as it turns out. So now you're at a church, and you're trying to, I guess, now fulfill what he would have, and building his kingdom through the church. If you could sum up how you hope that looks, or what you imagine God might do, what would you say?
There's a couple things. I think what I'm after long term is to be a part of where God is and where he's going. Because, to go back to what I said before, I think it's almost like the gray areas are disappearing. I say the lights are going out in culture. And kingdom culture is what's coming forth. And I think that's what I would say to creatives, is to not compromise your view on kingdom culture and keep the light on in something that's meant to go dark. It's black. I think there's a black and white phase coming, and people are going to be running towards the church, and we need to be ready for it.
Yeah.
And so as a creative person, I find myself in an interesting place, caring more about infrastructure than I do about vision, which is maybe just God flipping it in my own brain. But it's going, will our infrastructure sustain a massive wave of people? Will our problems be exasperated by pressure in the system? And we've got to start screwing things down to the deck. The things that are known, anchor them. The things that are unknown, try to figure them out. But I think it's going to be one of the most amazing times in human history. I really believe that. And I just want to help make the church ready for that, whatever that means. And if that means sound business practices or how to have a thriving creative culture, in so much as it matters to me. My goal for Crossroads is it's the greatest place creatively to come work on the planet, and I think we as the church, if we have kingdom culture, should aspire to that. Doesn't mean we pay people $1 million and have swank offices all the time, but that we do really live out, Romans 12, where that we would build each other up in love and all that. I don't remember. You probably know the verse more than I do.
There's so much that I could ask you about all of that, and I guess we've got a few days together, so maybe hopefully we can find another time to grab some more stuff, if that's cool.
Yeah, no problem.
But thank you for now and for what we've been able to talk about. I feel like in our Hillsong creative world, where we've been going through similar sorts of thinking, and because I think that God is doing something pretty unique on the earth, and I think he is, he's raising creative awareness, I think, and the need for creativity in the church, not just music, not just like you said, the 3 songs and then his sermon, but real ways of expressing the gospel in ways that make sense to people that isn't necessarily through just one media.
Maybe the last thing on that, if you allow me, is I think we're going to, in the same way that there's this batten down the hatches, like get things settled, it's also this is what I would say to people who are listening to this, is knowing who you are before the Lord is huge. And then knowing who you are within your church is huge. And then knowing where your church is in the world is huge, because if somebody had told me that 10 years ago, it would have been really helpful. There's a part of, I'm 42, so I'll say this to everybody younger than me, is that the ego is gone. And in that creative world, if we can get to a place where the ego is completely gone and we're working together, it's something really special can happen, across the planet, really.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I love that thought, the thought of ego being something foreign to us as Christians and as Christian creatives. I love the thought that we don't attach our value to the people that we've worked with or the jobs we've worked on, but that we attach our value to Christ and the message that he's given us. My takeaway from that interview is this: let's be people whose motivation is not centered around trying to get the most from others, but really about what we can give, what we can build into others, how we can see them prosper and move forward, how we can help them to find Christ, and how we can help them to navigate the life that they're given to live. Next up, we've got the Creative Compass, where we explore some of the things that we are wanting to value as a creative team here in Sydney, Australia. This section is with Mashiri, Annie Garrett, and myself. So let's jump into the Creative Compass. So for a long time, probably as long as Hillsong Church has been around, excellence has been a key value as a church and as a team. So how do you define excellence? Because sometimes excellence can be, well, that service went well, or excellence can be that conference, we actually, it happened and it went well. Nothing major went wrong. Yeah. But is that excellent? Is that how we should approach it?
It could be, or it could...
A component of excellence.
All right.
I think it's like, oh, go ahead.
No, go.
I think we've got to look at the process of how we get somewhere, because for us, we do conferences and we have a lot of different events, and the end result can be amazing, and then you can forget what the lead up looked like and maybe where it took its toll. So I think as leaders, we need to always be looking at we pulled it off, or it was a success in some ways, but how were people treated along the way? Or how was the communication, or how was the experience for our volunteer? It's not just did we achieve something or complete something, but what was the experience for everyone involved? Because we're not about events, or we actually are stewarding a whole team.
Yeah.
So what is that like?
So then is excellence, it could be so easy to think about excellence just as in terms of, for example, the musicians played well and they didn't hit any bum notes. They were all good. It was excellent. But there's something more to having a spirit of excellence than just that, right?
Yeah, I think that is a component, because if they didn't play the music right, and if they didn't, turn up on time, and if they didn't, you also address that too as part of excellence. But then if that happened well, everything was, actual execution of whatever was done well, that's good. Let's move on to the next component of excellence, which is like what Annie is saying. What did it cost to get there? So you played well, and you were at every rehearsal, and you were whatever. But then what happened that week was you had sick kids at home, and your wife was by herself. And you kept saying yes, and that took its toll all week. And now you've gone back home to... You get what I mean? I think the leader's
you didn't do your assignments.
Exactly. Exactly right. So the leader's perspective on excellence has got to be holistic. Yes, it does include playing well and executing a conference or a service well. But then the leader goes beyond that and looks at what it took to actually get that. And was it worth the cost?
Right. So Pastor Brian would sometimes talk about a spirit of excellence. Would you see that there's the difference between just playing well, for example, and what we're talking about, this extra bit is the spirit of it?
Yeah, I think the spirit of excellence encompasses way much more than performance. Way, way more. I think, I keep going back to what Annie said, the spirit of excellence looks like everything surrounding the activity that's being measured.
Right.
And then weighing that up as to whether or not it was worth doing it, or was done well, or was it done well? The communication, the lead up to it, the cost that was paid by the individuals who contributed to it.
Right.
Was it worth it? And if it wasn't, what lessons have been learned? What measures have been put in place to make sure that does not happen again? Because in some ways, excellence is progress as well. And if you're progressing, that means you're addressing issues that actually currently exist.
Right.
So there's,
Yeah, I feel like you're talking about like a leadership excellence or a personal excellence as well as... So it's easy to expect excellence from your team members. Turn up, know the songs or know the part that you're playing and do it really well. But then what you're describing, I feel like is more the personal excellence of the whole thing, but also particularly the leadership.
Right.
But as a leader then, sometimes you have to move beyond what's comfortable or what you feel is normal or whatnot to lead well, to lead excellently. And I think that's a challenge. That's something I take on myself. I have to actually step up to that place of excellence in leadership in order to lead well, to lead excellently. And it's a thing we have to think about how we're leading, not just getting the job done.
Especially in our world here, it's so the activity is it's relentless. So it is very difficult for a leader to objectively, for example, do an event or a service and then take the time to look back at that.
Right.
Because in a sense, Sunday's coming again.
Right.
Yeah.
So it really takes some mental fortitude and some conviction to look back at something that's already been to learn lessons that would inform the next one.
Yeah. Practically speaking, for us as a team, we do things like service reports so that every service, after the service, someone will complete a questionnaire, essentially, looking at the key areas of the service to see if it went well or it didn't do well, because the baseline is excellence. We want things to go well and then to be improving from that. What we're trying to go for is this whole other level of excellence, isn't it? It's a whole nother spirit of probably encapsulates some of the other things that we were talking about, but growing personal growth, personal responsibility, personal health, and being excellent in gifting and in service and all areas, which is a lot harder to do, but it's important.
It is.
I think it's just making it personal. Did I bring my best in everything that I did? And a lot of times you're the only one that will know, because you could have turned up and looked the part, but you had a horrible attitude, or you didn't treat people well, or you just, so a lot of it is like, you're the only one that's going to know how you're going in this stuff anyways. But if that is always a compass of like, whatever I'm doing, whether it's seen or unseen, am I bringing my best?
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that best is independent of someone else's best, isn't it? As in, what you might bring might be completely different to what I bring.
Yeah.
And yet we both have to bring our best.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So then in our personal leadership, what's one area that we've been trying to work on, or that we could just use as a practical example for people to think about in their own leadership?
Just personally?
Yeah.
I'm still working on it. Just start being prepared for things way before I need to be. Like not waiting until I'm asked to speak or share something, but just always having something ready and making it a habit, not something that I have to do because I'm asked, but just always preparing something to push myself.
I think it's being able to kind of review whatever it is I'm part of in terms of activity at church. I've got to be able to review that honestly. Like, even though the overarching banner of our service, maybe it was great, I've got to look at the contribution I brought to that and actually review and say, okay, was that as good as it could have been? And if not, what am I doing about it?
And I would be the same. I think having the inner strength to look back at my contribution.
That's right.
And make sure it was as good as it could be, and even ask for feedback on that to be making sure that I'm improving. Because I think that's the hardest thing. I can contribute and I can do it all day, every day, but doing it well and then improving on it the next time, that's hard.
Yeah.
So that would be my one thing. Well, that's it for today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to subscribe, you can do that on iTunes, YouTube, or SoundCloud. And I'd encourage you to do that so you can be a part of the journey with us. We'd love to hear from you too. So if you want to give us your comments, do that on our Instagram. It's @HillsongWCC. And we'll see you next time.